G'day, I'm Mark from Self Sufficient Me, and over the past 18 years I've grown over 150 fruit trees right here in this dense, heavy clay soil. So stick around and I'll show you what works, what doesn't, what fruit trees you shouldn't bother growing in clay, and what varieties thrive, and how you can do it too, even if you're dealing with soil that's as hard as concrete or as sticky as clay. Let's get into it. Clay soil is made up of tiny particles that hold water well, but it drains poorly. And it's sticky when wet and very hard when dry. You can get different types of clay soil, of course. Some is worse than others. This one here is probably in the middle somewhere. If I dig down a bit deeper, it gets worse. But yeah, it's not good stuff. The main challenges growing in clay are poor drainage, leading to root rot, compaction of the soil, which makes it harder for the roots to get down and grow properly, hard to dig. So that's a problem when you're planting fruit trees or doing drainage or anything like that, and we'll get to drainage later. And yeah, the main one is pH and nutrient lockup. I think that's probably the biggest one out of the four that I've just mentioned. Clay soils often have an alkaline pH above 7, though this can vary by region. When the pH is outside of the ideal range, typically 6 to 7 for most fruit trees, certain essential nutrients like iron, manganese, phosphorus and zinc become chemically unavailable to fruit trees and plants, even if they are present in the soil. And that is called nutrient lockup. So what this means for fruit trees is stunted growth, pale leaves, yellowing, chlorosis, and poor fruiting can result, not because the nutrients aren't there, but because the plant can't access them. So your fruit trees might appear nutrient deficient even after throwing a good helping of fertilizer down, simply because the pH level isn't right for the tree to absorb the nutrients, or the roots in that plant or tree just simply can't get down or get around or get the feeder roots out to be able to get those nutrients. So how can you manage this problem? Well, the book will tell you what you can do is you can test for the soil pH. I've never done that. I mean, I've done that as a novel thing to do, but not before planting. You know, what's the point? If you know you've got clay, you know it's going to be an issue. And most people wouldn't do that. And I have never done that. What I have done is I've used organic matter, compost, aged manure, mulch, to buffer pH and improve the nutrient availability. That is by far my favourite and most easiest way, but we'll talk more about that later. The other thing you can do is you can use a chemical like sulfur, a sulfur product, and that can help break it down and free it up. If your fruit tree is suffering and it's growing okay, well, what you can do is give it a foliar spray, like iron chelates and that type of thing, other nutrients and trace elements, and get the nutrients through the foliage rather than through the roots. And that can give you, or the plant, the tree, some temporary relief and keep it going while you're trying to make it happier in the soil. Key solutions that actually practically worked for me, and let's go right back to the beginning. The first thing is siting. I sited most of my orchard on the highest ground on our property. Like, this was all blank. There was nothing here, all you can see here. It looks untidy at the moment because I'll show you the ground. It's a bog hole down here, down the back. It has been raining non-stop for about, I don't know, 18 months. And so it's an appropriate time to show you this video and about clay, because on a normal clay property, if you didn't manage it properly, all these trees would be dead. They just would not be able to sustain the bogginess. But you can see there's a lot of natives around here because they can handle this wet weather and the really dry. So it doesn't really matter to them. These gum trees, they've got strong roots and all that. But fruit trees, they're not native. Most of them aren't native to here. So you're going to have to baby them and look after them. So that was the first thing I did, was I sited it on the higher ground because water runs downhill and it runs away. So that will always stay drier than down the bottom here of the hill. The other thing I did right from the beginning, it wasn't a big job. All I did was run some ag pipe with a sock on it so that the clay wouldn't get inside it. There's about 3 or 4 that are running all the way down here, and that runs down to the bottom of our property where our chickens are, but past the chickens down there to a dam, which we used to have ducks, and now it's a second watercourse for chickens and other animals and lizards and all sorts of wildlife. But yeah, all that water runs into that, or a lot of it does, and it helps with the management of that top orchard. But there are some fruit trees that a bit of drainage is not enough. And those are trees like avocados. And what I'm just going to show you right now, which is the fairy floss berry, my wife's favourite fruit tree here. She just loves the taste of them. It's the Panama berry. I've mounted the tree up using some of this plastic, well, it's garden barrier stuff. It's about 1.5 foot high. And I've just got that main root ball and taproot out of the clay soil. As you can see, it's growing really well. I was growing straight into the soil here. It had decent drainage. Like everything else is growing very well here. All the other trees, mangoes, guava, this is a nashi pear, citrus. You've got a pomelo there, got a little lychee, all growing good. And the Panama was about here where I've got this mulch, and I'll talk more about why I do this later. But it just would not survive. It got to a decent height, it tried its best, but it struggled to get nutrients and it unfortunately perished. But building it up like that, it works a treat. I've done the same thing for our avocados. We've even got a few still on. There's another one here. You'll see that I've hilled it up considerably, and that's to keep that taproot out of the clay soil. Even so, I've planted several avocados, hoping that some of them would keep going. Sometimes you can do your best, especially for a tree like an avocado, you can do your best to get it out of the clay and into free draining soil, but it will still contract disease like root rot disease, simply because that disease is in the soil anyway, and it just gets into the plant, unfortunately. Now, there has been some recent advances in the last few years with commercial grafting onto rootstock that is root rot resistant, and you'd think, well, that's great. Yeah, only if these commercial companies would let homeowners buy some of these trees, but at this present time, they're just using it for commercial use only, and you know why that is, don't you? They just want us to buy avocados from the store rather than growing our own, because a really good flourishing avocado tree in a great location, well, it produces a heap of fruit. I mean, I remember visiting my brother-in-law and my sister when they lived over in the Natal region of South Africa. Avocados there were about 20 cents each, and some of those trees were as big as our gum trees. They were massive things. Just grew so easily and so well. Yet some places around the world, and like here in my backyard, they're very difficult to grow. That's just the way gardening is, I suppose. But yeah, it'd be nice if the scientists would let the little guys have a go. Regardless, hilling up works, and I can show you a great example down here in the bottom of our property where it's starting to get all sloppy. This mulberry tree here, it's not dead, it's coming into winter, so it's just losing its leaves. But I can't get in here to mow, but it's difficult for you to see. But that is actually hilled up. I moved that tree from down here where I mistakenly put it too far down the hill. And in hindsight, it probably is still too far down the hill. It's still surviving and doing well. That's simply because I hilled this up when I transplanted the tree, and it's been going good ever since. So yeah, hilling up does work. And of course, like I alluded to earlier, organic matter. I'm often doing this. I mean, often, I'm crazy about it. I've been doing it for the last 18 years, and you'll see scattered areas, even not necessarily around fruit trees, but just randomly piles of mulch that I've chipped up through the chipper and just left sit in random locations. Because what happens is this mulch, especially if it is around a fruit tree, that breaks down into the soil and it creates its own chemical reaction, seeps into the clay and helps break down that clay and loosen that clay up. It's just like gypsum would do, which is another good soil amendment. That also helps, and I wouldn't shy away from using gypsum as well around your garden. I've done that too, and other soil amendments is fine to help speed that process up, but nothing beats mulch and organic matter, manures and that dug into the soil or just left on top for it to do its thing. But there is a faster way, and that way I'll show you in a second, and it's probably the best way of all, and I'll show you what I mean soon. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was another practical way is when you do plant your fruit tree, instead of digging a deep hole, well, dig also as wide as you can go. And the reason for that is you want a nice wide hole so that you can sort of put breaks in the wall, and when you plant the tree, especially initially, that root ball isn't just going to be sitting in a clay bathtub. So when it rains, that clay is not seeping that water through, and your root ball is just sitting in a bowl of water. That's a quick way to kill your fruit tree and waste money. So amending the soil is all well and good. It takes time, lots of effort, but it works. The best and easiest way is to bring in some soil to put over the top of your clay. Now, when we bought this property, I was at a loss as to why there was about half a foot to a foot of standard dirt all around the back of our property, probably the first 30 or so meters from the back door of the house. And then as the hill dropped off, it just went to loamy and clay soil. And then up the top of the hill, from our front gate, it was just red clay from the get-go. And it wasn't until a few years after buying the property, I was speaking to my neighbour. He was here when our house was built. And he said to me, "Mark, did you know that the previous owner brought in several truckloads or more of fill to spread through the backyard?" What he essentially did was, and cleverly so, if he was going to plant an orchard here, which maybe was his intention at the beginning, or have a garden or whatever, he rightly thought, well, I'll just cover the top of this clay. The more you can bring in and cover your clay soil, the better, of course. But even half a foot, even 6 inches is better than nothing. It doesn't have to be good garden soil, because when you talk about amending soils, it's far easier to amend crap garden soil or standard fill than it is to amend clay. So you're better off even getting cheap fill from anywhere, and maybe you might see some signs around where fill is welcome. Some properties, especially in rural areas, will say, we welcome fill, and that means they're welcoming people to come in with just standard dirt that they get from scraping off a property, and maybe they're building a new house or something. So if that dirt is decent dirt, doesn't have to be fantastic garden soil or premium garden soil at all. They just want that fill to go into areas and to build up their garden, and that's why they do it. So yeah, you can see that you've got normal soil at the top soil. It's not fantastic, but it's normal soil. And then when you dig right down, it starts turning into clay. The topsoil is starting to mix in with the clay and improve it just slightly. But the crux is, the more you dig down, the worse the clay gets. So what that little bit of topsoil will give you is plenty of depth enough to grow a whole array of other fruit trees, like all the citrus you want, all the stone fruit you want if you're in an area where you can grow stone fruit, mangoes, lychees, olives, Barbados cherry, apples, a whole array of Asian fruits, the star apple, mulberries, and a whole plethora of fruit trees you can grow practically in clay and have no worries at all and have a very successful growing orchard. If you're like me and you can't help yourself and you really want to test the limits, well, you will try growing trees like custard apples and avocados and other trees like this Panama berry, but you're going to have to work hard at getting them to grow and outmaneuver the clay. A few maintenance tips. Don't overwater, it's self-explanatory. It's just going to keep the ground more wet. Trees and plants, they need oxygen around their root zone, so if it's constantly wet, they're not going to get that. Keep the mulching up around your fruit trees, that's always going to help. Like I said, you're better off using that more so than fertilizer. Don't over-fertilize. It's tempting to try to solve your problems through throwing down more fertilizer. All you're going to do is waste money and potentially burn the roots and burn your fruit tree. Rather than extra fertilizer, go with the organic matter. Even if it was organic type fertilizers, better than synthetic fertilizers, that's for sure. Like I said before, don't plant them too deep. Deep planting, where you might plant a fruit tree down deeper than its root ball. So down where the stem is covered, or some of the stem is covered. And the reason why people do that is they believe, and I also believe this for several types of fruit trees, that you can get extra root growth coming from that and build a bigger root ball and thus a more healthier and more productive tree that way. But that will never work in clay soil. All you're doing is suffocating it, get collar rot, all sorts of things. So you would only practice deep planting in free draining soil in the perfect location. So if anything, you want to plant a little bit, even above or a lot shallower than you usually would. Yeah, so the difference between our backyard and the front yard couldn't be more stark. The backyard here has got that extra fill put in that we've been able to transform into beautiful topsoil. The front yard, no fill, and all I've had to do over the last 18 years is keep dumping heaps and heaps of mulch and organic matter into that front garden so we can grow our front food forest. The thing is, it's taking a long time. It's working, but it's not the easiest thing to do, and it takes literally a decade or so. People can do it faster, they work harder at it, of course, but amending the soil through the organic method is definitely a longer way of doing it. But nevertheless, it's still a good, cheap way to amend your soil and help with that clay problem. So if you've been told that fruit trees won't grow in clay, don't believe it. With the right approach, the right attitude, you will not only grow fruit trees in clay, they will thrive. And remember, you don't need to have perfect soil to be self-sufficient. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe. Give it a big clay thumbs up. Share it around, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. Cheers.